In the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are also dealing with another crisis, systemic racism, one that has been going on for centuries and that we can only hope will one day be resolved. Protests took place around the world after George Floyd was killed by police officers on May 25th, 2020. After being accused of using a counterfeit $20 bill, his neck was compressed by an officer's knee while he was in handcuffs for roughly 9 minutes. He later died. Numerous other instances of racism against African Americans have led to demonstrations against police brutality and systemic and institutional racism that many feel have gone unchecked for decades. However, recently we have noticed a tipping point. People of all races have become fed up. We are finally acknowledging and weeding out racist symbols in American culture. Major companies are considering rebranding their products that are perceived as racist. Confederate statues are being removed. Streets are being renamed Black Lives Matter. The structure of police departments are being reconsidered. We can only imagine what's on the horizons. As Christians, we have to take the leadership role in race relations. Tonight, we have come together as a Baylor family to discuss solutions and to brainstorm ideas about what we do to make Baylor more inclusive. The events surrounding protests were the impetus and energy for tonight's panel. The presidents of both alumni organizations, Marie Brown and Taryn Arsuno Allen, got together to brainstorm ideas about something that would be meaningful not only for alumni, but also for current students and the university. As a Baylor alumni, class of 2001 and 1998, and chair of the Baylor Department of Journalism, Public Relations, and New Media, it is an honor to moderate this panel tonight. Brown and Allen gathered a group of esteemed panelists, including Representative Colin Allred, President Linda Livingstone, Dr. Michael McFarland, and René Maciel. Please join me in welcoming them. Representative Colin Allred is an American politician, civil rights lawyer, and former professional football player. President Linda Livingstone has served as president of Baylor University since 2017. Regent Michael McFarland is the superintendent of schools of Crowley ISD, where he serves more than 15,000 students across 23 campuses. Regent René Maciel serves as the missions pastor at First Woodway Baptist Church in Waco, Texas. Before we begin this town hall meeting, let's discuss how it is organized. We have 3 questions organized along the following areas: historical Baylor, Baylor student concerns, faculty staff retention, Christian mission, and the future of Baylor University as it relates to students of color. We will have an opportunity to take a few of your questions at the end, so be sure to submit them using the chat function. As part of Representative Allred's introduction, he has requested a few additional minutes to discuss 4 important topics: the COVID-19 pandemic, bills that are circulating in the House, policing reforms, personal accounts of current events, and social and racial injustices. I will now turn it over to Representative Allred to discuss his thoughts.
Well, thank you, Dr. Moody-Ramirez, and good to see you, Dr. McFarland, and President Livingstone, and René Maciel. Thank you for being with me, letting me join you this evening. I'm going to have to jump off this here in a little while because we are having a delegation phone call right now about the crisis that's going on in Texas with COVID-19, and I'm really sorry that I'm not going to be able to be on for this entire panel because I really was looking forward to it, and as a Baylor alum, I am just really thrilled that we're even having this conversation. And, I just want to begin, of course, by thanking the Baylor Black Alumni Alliance and the Latino Alumni Group for hosting this and for asking me to join. I am a proud alum from the class of '05, so not that long ago. And I was also a football player at Baylor, where I was the captain of our team in my senior year. And my experience at Baylor is probably a bit different, having been a student athlete, because I moved in very diverse circles. We were constantly together as teammates, and anybody who's played in our Division I sports knows how demanding that time frame is. But as somebody who grew up in Dallas, was raised by a single mother who went to our public schools here in Dallas and went to a school that was very diverse, that was our largest demographic group was Latino, second largest demographic group was African American, and then you'd have your white population that was much smaller at my school. Coming to Baylor was a bit of a culture shock initially, and I'm not sure that at that time we had the same kind of focus and understanding around the need for us to constantly provide our students of color coming into these settings with the support around them to make sure that they feel not only welcome but can thrive. And I know that under President Livingstone, that Baylor's moving in the right direction, and I'm a big fan of yours, Madam President. And so thank you for what you're doing for our school, because all of us who went to Baylor want to see it be a leader not only in academics, but also in turning out incredibly well-rounded young people who also embrace the diversity that our country has, that are not only not discriminatory or indiscriminatory in their actions, but are actively anti-racist. And I think that every major movement for change in our country that's ever taken place has been led by people of faith. It's been led by folks who drew on that faith and drew on the tenets of our faiths to understand the inherent equality in all people, and also the need for us to reach out and to be a part of the solution. And so I think that both as an educational institution and as an institution of faith, that Baylor is uniquely positioned to really be a productive part of where we need to go from here. And I'll just say this about diversity. I think oftentimes we talk about diversity as though it is a benefit to the individual student, whether they're African American, Latino, Native American, whatever, Asian, whatever it might be, that we are giving them something by trying to engage with them, or to the faculty member. But what we've learned from social science and from folks who've studied this is that it's a benefit for the entire organization, for the entire atmosphere, for any group that you're entering, that it's better to have more diverse voices at the table, to have women at the table, to have people of color at the table, to have people from different backgrounds, so that when you reach decision-making or you have a discussion, it's more representative and can go deeper. And so, I think that for us moving forward, for those of us who love Baylor, we want to continue to see us, become, more diverse, have more focus on retaining, recruiting diverse faculty and staff, of course, but also making a place that's welcoming for students of color coming in. But I know that there's going to be some challenges around doing that, and I'm happy to play any role that I can in helping with that. I just want to touch really quickly on what we're trying to do in Congress right now, because I think that this is in many ways an inflection point for our country, and inflection points mean that you can go one way or the other. And I think that we have a real chance to have some positive outcomes from these crises that we're seeing. COVID-19, the death of George Floyd, and the subsequent movement around it, in many ways have held up a mirror to our society and shown us so many things that we knew were there, that we just haven't always been able to discuss honestly. And that's the same, it goes for Baylor, it goes for any institution that exists in our country. But it also, I think, has forced us to have much more honest conversations than we have had really in my lifetime. And if you were going to any of the protests in Dallas, you would see faith leaders there talking about using their faith to lead and to appeal to our better angels. You would see very diverse folks in the group there to try and call for an end to to any form of systematic racism and to push for reforming of our relationships between our police and our communities of color. And we are trying to do that through legislation in Congress as well. And I just want to make sure everybody knows that this is something that we recognize as a chance for us to do something. I hope that on a bipartisan basis, that without kind of getting into ideology or politics or anything like that, that we can use this as an opportunity to move us forward by providing some reforms that will actually both improve our relationships between our law enforcement and our communities of color, and also tear down some of the barriers that exist. But one of the first things, of course, is going to have to be to get past COVID-19, and the impacts of COVID-19 have not been felt equally, and that's something that we have to stress. When you're talking in Dallas County, 60% of our cases are Latino. We're talking about hospitalizations in Dallas County. 80% of our hospitalizations are what we call essential workers, which we know are disproportionately Black and Latino. And many of the underlying conditions that make COVID-19 more lethal are also more prevalent in our communities of color for many of the reasons that I'm sure y'all will discuss this evening. And so we have to not only tackle this virus, but we have to try and tear down these barriers that have been for far too long in place, making it too hard for all Americans to chase their version of the American dream. And that's kind of where I want to wrap up by saying that for me, Baylor was a part of my American dream. I was raised by a single mother who was a public school teacher, and we don't pay our teachers enough. So we didn't have a lot of money, but I got a scholarship to Baylor. And for me, Baylor was a springboard. I got into law school while I was at Baylor, but then had a chance to play in the NFL for 5 years until I hurt my neck. Then went to law school and became a lawyer and worked in President Obama's administration. And now I have the honor of serving the community that I grew up in. But none of that would have been possible for me without Baylor. And I really want to stress that, because an institution like Baylor can open so many doors. It can change lives. And it did for me. It changed my life. The fact that I had those years playing at old Floyd Casey Stadium, trekking over there for games and practices every day, and the experience of going to also a university that was small enough that folks cared about me, but big enough where I could be exposed to the full university experience. And it's a special place, and I know that we've gone through some tough times, and we've had things that have required us as Baylor alums to look at ourselves and look at our university. But I also recognize that the foundational things that are in place at Baylor that make it a special place are there, will be there, and will be there into the future and into perpetuity. And to me, those things are some of the things I just mentioned, in addition to the Christian mission. And I don't talk a lot publicly about my faith, but I draw on my faith very deeply, and it's extremely important to me. And it's also an extremely important part of my decision-making process and the things that I do every single day. And for me, even though I'm not Baptist, my family's Methodist, my faith was deepened at Baylor. And it gave me a chance to be around and in a community where I had a chance to pursue that, to take Old Testament, to take New Testament, to go to chapel, President, and have to, swipe my card to make sure that I was counted as being there. But I enjoyed that, and for me, it brought out things in me that I don't think I would have gotten at another institution. And so, because it's a special place, and because it means so much to me, I want to make sure that experience is available to as many people as possible, and to people of every different background. Because I think within our faith and the teachings of our faith is, fundamentally what it comes down to is the responsibility to take the grace that we've been given and to use whatever skills we have over on this earth to extend a helping hand to others. And what better way could we do that than to be a part of tearing down some of the barriers that we all know are inconsistent with our faith and inconsistent with our ideals as a country. And so, I am really happy that we're having this conversation. I think it's great that President Livingstone is here, and I know that she's going to continue to lead us in a positive direction. But obviously, it's going to have to go past tonight. It's got to go past this evening. Going to have to go past us answering questions. It's going to require long-term commitment. It took us a long time to get into this position. It's going to take us a long time to get out of it. My pastor likes to say that when you're in a tough spot, just do the next right thing. Don't try to lie. Don't try to go back and change the facts. Just do the next right thing, and then the next right thing, and then the next right thing until you get out of that tough spot. And for us, the next right thing certainly is to work on the institution that we care about, Baylor University, work on the country and the state that we care about, and to try to move forward in a way that's much more inclusive and that really can continue to try to perfect our union. And so I'm going to jump on this call to talk about how we're going to try and keep y'all safe and try to deal with what's happening with COVID-19 and try to reverse what's happening in Texas, because we are one of the hottest spots in the country. And I'm sorry I won't be able to stay with you, but thank you so much for giving me a chance to join you this evening. And to Dr. McFarland and Mr. Maciel and President Livingstone, and to you, Dr. Moody-Ramirez, thank you for your time and for having this conversation.
Well, thank you for sharing your testimony, Representative Allred. And you really are a testimony to how scholarships can help people. And you have really done well, and we are proud of you. We're proud to have you as part of the Baylor family. So thank you.
Yeah.
And good luck.
Thank you for being with us.
Yes.
See you again.
Okay, so now we will move on to the panel discussion. Let's begin by discussing Baylor's history. As we all know, those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Historically, Baylor has been slow to make improvements in diversity and inclusion efforts. Dr. Vivian Malone Mays was hired as a mathematics professor at Baylor in 1966, only 5 years after being denied admittance to the school as a graduate student. She was among the first Black women in the nation to earn a Ph.D. in mathematics. In 2019, Baylor dedicated a bronze bust of Dr. Malone Mays, and it is on permanent display outside the entrance of the math department in Sid Richardson building. If you haven't gotten a chance to see it, please visit it. It's beautiful. In 2000, the Baylor Black alumni, Dr. Vivian Malone Mays Endowed Scholarship was created in her honor. So as you can tell, we are slow to make change, but we do change at Baylor. In another example, Reverend Robert Louis Gilbert, class of 1967, was Baylor's first African-American graduate. Later in the same day, he was joined by the first female African-American Baylor graduate, Barbara Walker. People don't know about Barbara Walker as much. In 2001, when I was hired, there were 8 Black faculty at Baylor University. There are 16, so that has doubled. That's progress, ever so slight. And of course, there is more work to be done. But Baylor, I would say that Baylor is definitely moving in the right direction. And we will talk more about Reverend Robert Louis Gilbert and Barbara Walker in a few minutes, because we have some exciting things on the horizon that we're going to do in their honor. So for the question, how does the university plan to utilize the Baylor Black Alumni Alliance, Latino Alumni Group, and the Black Faculty and Staff Association to ease racial tensions and promote equality among Black students of color? President Livingstone, we would like to hear from you first, as you serve as a key visionary for the university.
Well, thank you, Dr. Moody-Ramirez, and it's a pleasure to be with everyone tonight. I especially want to thank Marie and Taryn for putting this together and having the vision for this conversation this evening. And this is such an important time in the history of our country as we look at these issues, but I think it's also a seminal time for Baylor as well. And we have, I think, a particularly important role, and I think Representative Allred said it well, as a Christian institution of higher education, to really be an example for others that can be very, very important. And I think as we look at this situation, it's really important that at Baylor, we sort of get outside of the Baylor bubble and hear the voices that are out there and think about our role in all of this. And certainly part of that is taking action. which we have certainly made some announcements recently about that. We've announced diversity education for all of our students, faculty, and staff in the fall, which is something we haven't done comprehensively in the past. We have established a Baylor Conversation series on racial healing and justice that you, Dr. Moody-Ramirez, were a part of the last couple of weeks. Our Board of Regents stepped forward and made a statement that really said that, you know, our Christian mission does not align with issues of racism, and we've got to live our lives on our campus according to Scripture and to really be concerned about issues of social justice and racism. And then, of course, the Regents established a commission on historic campus representation to say, how do we tell our story more accurately about the history of the university? But actions are really important, and we have to keep doing that. And there are many more we need to take. But I think another really important part of what we're doing is listening. And it's not just listening, but it's really hearing what those voices are telling us on our campus and in our community. And I really think that's where the Baylor Black Alumni Alliance, the Latino Alumni Group, and our Black Faculty and Staff Association, along with our faculty of color, can be really valuable to us. You know, they're very distinct organizations with diverse communities even within them, among those different populations, and very strong leadership. And they can really help assist us as a university in charting a path forward that really creates a future for Baylor where all members of our community, whether it's our faculty, staff, students, alumni, and friends of color, all feel valued and all feel heard. And I think they can help us better understand the climate on our campus, the way our institution is perceived by others, and then the steps that we need to take so that all members of our community feel cared for, feel loved, and feel fully engaged in campus life. And so, you know, as part of that, one of the things that we've heard is just about the need for more support for our students of color, more scholarship opportunities. And so we have initiated a conversation on campus about what it means to create a meaningful scholars program that helps provide both scholarship support and resources for students who really care deeply about racial conciliation, really care deeply about addressing these issues. So we're real excited to announce this evening that we're going to create a Trailblazers Scholars Program in honor of people like our first graduates of the institution, Gilbert and Walker, and hope that this will be one small part of the steps that we take going forward to really support better diversity on our campus. We're committing as an institution $5 million in scholarship support to launch the Trailblazer Scholars Program. And we certainly want alumni and friends of the university to come alongside us so we can continue to grow and develop this program to make it a really significant part of what we do on our campus. So we'll select students every year for this program. There'll be a cohort, they'll receive scholarship dollars, and there'll also be some leadership development programs in place to help these students really contribute in important ways in our campus community. So I'm eager to tell people more about that as we flesh that out in the weeks and months ahead. But you know, the conversation tonight, the organizations that are a part of this are going to be really helpful to us as we move forward and really begin to make a bigger difference in the culture at Baylor in the years ahead.
Well, that's certainly a great plan, and I am excited as a faculty member, and I'm certainly looking forward to that. Thank you, President Livingstone. How about you, Regent McFarland? Do you have any suggestions based on your years in administration and your experiences at Baylor as a student?
Sure, just specifically, I'll talk first about just my experience at Baylor and as a student, what I would have wanted, and also kind of what I believe both the Baylor Black Alumni and the Latino Alumni Group could do. I think one of the things is, as students, the first thing you want to know is that you're not invisible, that you are present, that people recognize your humanity, that you have a voice. And so I think it is so important for the Baylor Black Alumni and the Latino Alumni Group to continue to elevate the voice of the students that are currently on the campus, as well as those that have gone on and graduated. It's so important for the people who are in leadership to hear about the experiences of people who are currently within our school systems and within our university. Because what I believe is this: I believe that if the people who are in authority actually hear firsthand what students are experiencing, what they're feeling, what faculty is experiencing and feeling, then I believe that we'll be able to create some systems that'll help us to address some of the challenges. Oftentimes when people don't feel heard, or they don't feel like there's an avenue for them to be heard, then that creates the animosity, that creates the disconnect, and that really creates sometimes the negative feelings that oftentimes exist from a small minority population. So I think the first thing the alumni group, the Baylor Black alumni and administration can do is create a way to where we systematically provide students an opportunity for them to be heard. And you know, it's more than just a diversity group or more than just an office, but it's creating some kind of mechanism where people feel really heard and really appreciated, they're acknowledged, and their concerns are not just brushed off. That's important. That's number one. I think what we're doing tonight is a prime example. We're doing this tonight, and that makes me feel like that this university really wants to understand and hear how it can be better. I think we got to do more of this. Oftentimes people think that we're looking for a solution. Most of the times we simply want to be heard because we can solve our own problems. I can guarantee that students can give you the solution to the problems if we listen to them. And so I'm definitely encouraged by this. That's the first thing. So the second thing though is as President Livingstone has already said, I mean, I think it's an outstanding a move to be able to create this program, this Trailblazers or this scholar program that we can actually really begin to address to why kids from poverty or kids of cities, some of the barriers, one of the key barriers is just financially, it is prohibited, it is just not, it's just extremely expensive for students to attend our university. We realize that. And so I think creating avenues to remove those barriers, man, I'm definitely excited to hear about this, about the program you mentioned, President Livingstone. But the third thing is, I do believe that we have to have some systematic programs and things that we put in place. So for example, I know that Baylor has a tuition, I think it's called the tuition benefit or tuition remission. I'm not sure what the appropriate name is, but I believe for professors who meet a certain qualifications, they have their students or their children have the ability to attend Baylor either at a discounted rate or at a extremely discounted rate. And I believe that is something that is available to professors. I'm not sure if it's available to all employees. And so one thing I can say is that in many universities, they make that benefit available to all employees. The reason why that's so important is that if you can think about the people that are maintaining the grounds of Baylor University, the custodians at Baylor University, the cafeteria workers, although it may be a contract situation, but if there was a way that we could figure out how to create a benefit for the children of those people who are working at Baylor University that are maybe in a lower pay grade or in a lower socioeconomic status, we can, in essence, we can increase our diversity by really creating this program that systematically allows for the children of people who are working at Baylor University to attend Baylor University at a reduced rate or in some kind of reduced rate. So I think that the Baylor Black alumni, I think that the Latino alumni working with administration, I think we can collectively come up with some creative ways to say, hey, diversity is important. So let's figure out how do we diversify our population from within. Also, the last thing is, I think that in any organization, the chief recruiters are the people from within that organization. So if we have if our students are feeling more engaged and more excited about the university, then I can see where we would be able to use members of our current Baylor Black alumni and members of our Latino alumni group to actually help to recruit others to come in to the university. And I think having a systematic way to do those things would help us to address our diversity issues. But I do believe that we're on the right track. But I do think it's important for us to do something specific for the employees who may not currently be able to participate in that benefit.
Okay, so I think those are all great ideas, and I agree that people definitely want to be heard, and that's usually when you ask people what they think one of the issues is they feel like they're not being heard. And I do like the idea of having helping financially. That's what enabled me to go to Texas A&M. In 1986, they actually had something that was called the Presidential Award, and that was actually a full ride for students. And of course, they cut all of that out with affirmative action. But those programs are very helpful for people of color. And I like the idea of extended tuition remission. for staff, faculty and staff. So if we could get the Alumni Association, both alumni associations, to look at that, I think that would be very helpful. So thank you. That was very helpful. Regent Maciel, do you have anything else to add?
I would just, let me say first of all that, you know, in my time of being at Baylor, and not only as a student there, a graduate student there, but also working there for 13 years in admissions and recruitment, and then also coming back to Baylor later on and serving at Truist Seminary as an assistant dean there at the seminary. I was always looking around, honestly, I was always looking around me to see someone that I could relate to.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to relate to somebody, and I'd always look around to see how many Hispanics were in the room. I was always looking around to see how many staff were considered Hispanic or African American. I was always challenged by the fact that there was most of the Hispanics that I did see around the institution were working in the gardens or working around the campus. Mm-hmm. And so it was in 1986, as a matter of fact, that Herbert Reynolds called me in. I was a lowly admissions counselor, and Herb Reynolds called me in and said, Renee, we have got to recruit more Hispanic students to the institution. How do we do that? And I was the Hispanic recruiter at the university. I would go to all the Hispanic Texas schools throughout Texas that were considered Hispanic institutions. And I would just, like Dr. McFarland was saying, I would bemoan the fact that many of the students that I was talking to were not going to be able to come to Baylor University. As much as I was trying to get them to come to Baylor University, that was not going to happen for the simple fact they just did not have the finances. And on the second thought was just the idea of they would not fit in. They would not see people of culture. But Dr. Reynolds, how do we do it? And I said, well, Dr. Reynolds, tell me who your regents are that are of culture, of ethnicity. And he says, I have none. I said, well, tell me about your administration. Do you have any administrators that are of ethnicity or Black or Hispanic? None. Any faculty? And there was a few at that time in 1986. And I said, well, I think it's going to be important for students of culture, for students of color, for them to be able to come here, first of all, from a financial standpoint, but also to be able to see people they could relate to. It's going to be important for them to see faculty and staff and administration and regents that they can relate to. And he says, I need your help. Do you know of anybody that would be interested? And I said, yes, I do. As a matter of fact, my dad would be a perfect regent. And my dad was the first Hispanic regent in 1990. And it made him young again. He thoroughly enjoyed serving Baylor again. He was a graduate in 1952. But he thoroughly enjoyed his time as a regent at Baylor. And I learned a lot from that, from my dad. But at the same time, I realized the important thing for us as an institution. And I want to say this, I am not a theologian. I'm a son of an educator. My dad was an educator, public education. And he was also a bivocational pastor. And so my theology comes from a man who loved God and loved people. And so let me just say this, I really believe, as Representative Allred and also Dr. McFarland stated a while ago, some great ideas, but I really believe this is a spiritual matter, that we as an institution have to look at it as a spiritual matter, that we see the brokenness in the things that we have done over past, but also looking to the forward, looking to the future of how we can continue to change the institution. And one thing I thought about right away as we look at the Black Alumni Alliance and also the Latino alumni group, maybe the idea of really developing this a day of prayer for justice and healing, that we call leaders together in our community, that we ask our community and the university to come together just for a day of prayer, just to start there from a standpoint of spiritual healing that we need as an institution. I think also it'd be good for us to have maybe a board of advisors that we call on from these groups, the Latino group and also from the Black Alliance, that we can put together a board of advisors or people that can speak into some of these things that Dr. McFarland talked about would be key and important for us. Scheduled meetings, maybe a phased plan where we have a chance to look at the equity issues and the racial tension that is going on, but really showing our community, our Baylor family, here are the steps that we are going to take to ensure that we are moving forward, that we are progressing in caring and loving and moving forward and moving past some of these racial inequities that have happened over time. And again, for me, I just think it's such an important thing for us as an institution. What an opportune time for us as an institution to be able to take this forward and be able to move the institution to a different day in the way we care for people. And that brokenness, I truly believe with all my heart, Dr. Moody-Ramirez, it begins with me. It begins with me. I have to tell you, it begins with me from the standpoint of caring for people around me, considering them, noticing them, caring for them. And I would also recommend to President Livingstone of calling in Black leaders in our community and Hispanic leaders in our community. And she's tried, I know she's tried because I've been in some of those meetings, but continue to make an effort in calling these leaders together and using them as liaisons as the students are coming to campus, as the parents are coming to campus, to help them be more acclimated to the institution and acclimated to Waco as well. Because again, it's still an odd number for a number of students that are coming of culture to Baylor University and feel adjusted and feel good about being at the institution. And I know, again, President Livingstone and the Board of Regents are making a tremendous effort with this commission of being able to change things. And I'm excited to be a part of that. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for those thoughts. And I agree. I think it is important to see people who look like you. And unfortunately, many of the students talk about that. They talk about, well, when I was 80s, I would run on campus and I wouldn't see another person. I wouldn't see another Hispanic person. And I would imagine that that would be tough. It's tough when you don't see people who look like you. And I can say that that has definitely changed. If you walk around on campus now, you will see more people of color. So that's definitely one area that Baylor has changed in. And I definitely agree that change begins with the person in the mirror. So I appreciate your thoughts. So now we're going to move on to the student concern section. So the hashtag Dear Baylor, it was inspired by the hashtag Dear PWI, which offers a safe space for Black, Indigenous, and people of color at Baylor to share their experiences on Instagram. Posts note that Baylor students, like students across the country, are frequently called on to answer questions in class about the Black experience. They are frequently stereotyped as lacking intelligence and singled out and ridiculed for their ethnicity. How does Baylor plan to nurture the students of color where they feel valued as students and not just a statistic at Baylor? Regent McFarland, we would like you to answer this question first because of your unique perspective as a Black alumnus and now Regent.
All right, thank you. So I think, that's really a very difficult question, but I can tell you that the work that I've heard that Dr. Livingstone is planning with diversity training and implicit bias training, that kind of training is a start. I mean, I think we have to recognize that all of us, I have bias, we all have bias. And that bias, if we're not intentional about addressing it and recognizing it, then that bias will come out in what we do. So reality is if the professors are of a different ethnicity, a different income level, a different culture from the students, then you're going to have bias. And if you don't have any knowledge of another student's race, ethnicity, or upbringing, then that bias is going to come through in your practice. Not good or bad, but it's just there. And we got to recognize that it's there. And I think the training is the first part, because really the students' interaction, Baylor is an idea. Baylor is a concept. The Baylor is really the people that I interact with. And so if the people that students interact with are treating them in a way that's different than what our mission and our vision is, then I think that's the issue that we have to address. And I think training is really the number one way to be able to do that. And then really making sure that we have systems in place where students can be heard and they can go to people that they can go to. For me, one of the during my experience, I had several situations that happened to me. But what I remember most was the fact that I had people that I could go to. And they were not always African-American people. They were coaches, it was actually registrars and other people who I could go to who I knew treated me as a human being. And so their ethnicity did not make the difference. What made the difference was their heart. And I think their heart was the way it was because of the training and the expectations that had been laid. Now, I do believe that there is a need for a more culturally diverse staff and professors. However, I think most important is that people are trained to treat people as people and understand other cultures. I think that's the most important thing that we can do.
Okay, thank you. And correct me if I'm wrong, so you're the most important thing. And then we need to make sure that we have systems in place to follow up. And then when you were a student, you experienced some things, but you felt like you had people that you could go and talk to. They didn't have to necessarily be African American, as long as their hearts were in the right place.
That's correct.
Okay, that's good.
That is correct. And it's probably, during my undergrad, because I attended Baylor twice, during my undergrad and then also for my doctorate. And in both situations, my undergrad, I was an athlete. And so, of course, the natural security safety net was my coaches and Coach Taft, Coach Pickle, and others. But also there were ladies in the financial aid office, and there were ladies in the registrar's office that took a special interest. And so they made the difference, quite frankly. There were situations, but those people I could go to made the difference. We also had an organization that was called back then the Association of Black Students. And so that organization gave me another space and a vehicle to be able to express concerns if we had them. And so I know there are a lot of different student organizations now at Baylor, and I think that's good because I think that's great for kids and great for students to be able to have outlets, for sure.
Okay, yes, I would definitely say that organizations would be an important piece, multicultural affairs. Thank you, Michael. Next, Regent Maciel, do you have any thoughts on this particular topic?
I guess this is a night of confession for me because I definitely would say that I'm an emotional pastor. And I went to a Baylor basketball game one night when President Livingstone gave a scholarship away to a Hispanic young lady. And for me, I was not crying because of the way Baylor was playing basketball. I was crying because of the incredible event that happened there. I don't know if you had a chance to be there. Maybe many of you had a chance to be there. But as she gave that scholarship, not only to that young lady, because it wasn't just to that young lady, it was to the family. And the Hispanic family is very much of family connections. But the thing that was missed there more than anything else, and it was an incredible thing, and I cried through the whole thing, and I think later on shot a note to President Livingstone about that. But the most incredible thing that we missed there was as I watched that young lady walk off the court and walk with her family to the sideline, she didn't have any other connections. There was nobody else of culture, of color that I can remember. And maybe this is a wonderful time for us to develop liaisons in our community of culture, Hispanic leaders, African-American leaders that can help us to be able to move along this experience of students that are coming to Baylor. And somewhere along the line, maybe it's even as they move in, that they have a chance to meet some of these liaisons, these Hispanic and African-American liaisons in our community that help them assimilate to the culture of Baylor, to the culture of Waco, Texas. And again, it was the most incredible experience again I've ever seen at Baylor University. I loved it, but I so wished that that young lady and her family were embraced past the court to understand we're so glad you're here. We're going to be here for you. We're glad that you're going to be a part of our Baylor family. And I'm so grateful that Baylor is making this strides by having this conversation tonight. But there does need to be more opportunity where we have liaisons in our community of culture, of the Hispanic community. And I meet monthly with Hispanic pastors and also African-American pastors just to connect with them, and how important that is for us as an institution that we have those connections in town that at monumental times like that scholarship, which was again, just blew me away, would give us opportunity to make sure that that student of culture started her experience or started his experience from the standpoint of meeting and knowing others in the community that believe and have a heart and hope for Baylor University. And again, I know that young lady probably is close to graduating. I'm not sure how long ago it was, President Livingstone, but it was an amazing thing. And I hope Baylor will give more opportunities to let those students experience not only the highlight of receiving the scholarships like Dr. McFarland talked about, but also to from the very beginning to maybe assimilate them into the Baylor family from that very moment they get there to the move-in to the first weeks and months, because let me just tell you this, as I served as a president of a Hispanic institution down in San Antonio, many of those Hispanic students and probably many African-American students, the very first month they are there, they're thinking, I can't do this. I can't do this. I don't have that support. I don't have my family. I'm not seeing the same culture, the same color. And many of them are thinking about going home the first month. And after they get past the first month, all of a sudden they think, well, maybe I can do it the second one. And they begin to believe in themselves. But I'm telling you how important it is for us to have liaisons or people from the community that are helping them along the way to adjust to the experience that they'll have at Baylor. And again, I know they'll have an incredible experience at Baylor, but how important it is for us to do better at helping through that assimilation as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Can I add something to that? All right. So I guess the other thing is, as he was speaking, one thing I thought about is we used to have a requirement, and it may be still in place. There was a requirement that if you were a part of a student club or organization, we had to perform community service. And so that was really the reason why I continue to do Meals on Wheels and all that today is because Baylor required that through ABS back then, Associated Black Students. That was our project. And so, and I think about Deal DeLosa, and I think about all the other I think about Sing in 93. We had a group that was a part of Sing in 93. And so I think the more that we can include all groups, the Black groups, the other multicultural groups, the Latino groups, into the life of the university, and if there is some kind of way that we can encourage groups of different ethnicities and different cultures to perform projects together, because it's important not only just for the adults to be able to relate to the students, but for the students of different cultures to be able to relate to each other. And the way they do that, you do that by playing together, by working together. And so from a systematic standpoint, if there was a way for us to require the Greek organizations to work with different cultures, or require the other student government organizations to work with different cultures, and through my process, I'm required to work with you, I realize that I'm just like you. Like, we have way more in common than we have that are different. And then you'll be amazed at how, the issues that we see right now that come oftentimes just because we don't talk to each other. You start to talk to each other. We're working together. We're playing together. We start to appreciate each other, and ethnicity and race and all those issues are not as significant once we do that.
Good. I would agree. It's a give and take relationship, and both the students and the community will benefit.
Right.
That's a wonderful suggestion. Now we will move on. President Livingstone, as the president of Baylor, how do you feel these concerns should be addressed?
Oh, I love hearing from René and Michael about their thoughts and suggestions, and those are just really valuable and helpful. And you mentioned the @DearBaylor Instagram tag that our students have been using, and I really encourage folks, if you haven't read any of those, that you really take the time to do that. I periodically go on and read some of those, and frankly, they're very heartbreaking, and they do not reflect what we want Baylor to be or the experience that we expect our students to have when they're on our campus. They certainly don't reflect appropriately a caring Christian environment that we're trying to create on our campus. And so reading those is very heartbreaking that is the experience that many of our students of color are having on our campus. And so it is imperative to us that we take that seriously, and we do things as campuses all across the country are sort of being self-reflective now to try to do everything we can. That's not what our students are experiencing. And certainly some of the things that have already been mentioned, I think, are important in that. Especially like this idea of our students engaging more with one another. Part of that is in conversation, part of it is in some of these activities that Dr. McFarland mentioned, where they're doing work together and community service work together. One of our deans actually, and I love what he says, we are graduating students into a diverse world with people who will have different backgrounds, experiences, and beliefs. We need to equip our students on how to succeed in such a world and how to work and live together in healthy ways. And so I think much of what we've talked about already is a way to do that. I think also we've talked a lot about sort of training and education programs, and we certainly have done training for our new students and faculty as they come in, but that's got to be a more inherent and embedded part of the experience at Baylor, not just for our leadership, but for all of our students and faculty and staff And then not even if we're going to do some comprehensive training for everybody, but then there's also got to be more in-depth engagement and training so that we're really seeing that it's making a difference and we're seeing kind of behavior changes. And then I think the other thing is we really have a responsibility when issues are brought to us that we have the right processes and procedures in place to look into claims of harassment or discrimination that has been made, and that we ensure that those processes are being used properly, that people know what they are, that they trust the system. I know in some of the surveying we've done and some of what we've heard, students don't feel that they can trust the processes. And so we want people to trust our equity office, to trust those systems, to know that they can report. We have had a lot of reports recently, as you might imagine, as this has become at the forefront of what people are talking about. And we've actually even brought in additional resources into that office to make sure that as we get reports, those are being investigated properly and in a timely way. But one of the things we have heard, we had our student NAACP chapter hosted a Zoom meeting where we had a large number of students participate a few weeks ago. And then I met with the leadership of our student NAACP chapter on Friday. And one of the things that comes out of that is this perception on our students' part that we don't necessarily take those reports seriously, or that we sweep those issues under the rug, and that there's not appropriate accountability for inappropriate behavior on our campus, like you would read about in the Dear Baylor Instagram account. And, you know, that is not the perception that we want to have. We want people to trust our system. We want them to know that we take those accounts seriously, that we look into them, that we hold people appropriately accountable. Now, there are federal, and Dr. McFarland would be aware of this, in a school system, there are federal and state privacy statutes that mean that we can't always report everything we know about what we've done as in regard to discipline, particularly for individual students. But one of the things we have to do, and that we're really aggressively looking at, is how do we find ways to report out on our website within appropriate legal guidelines, actions we take and accountability, so that people really trust our processes, that we're doing the appropriate things, that there is appropriate accountability in these situations. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do engaging with our students, and certainly finding opportunities to listen to them, but also to really be responsive to some of the issues and concerns that they have as we really change and build the culture on our campus to help it feel really warm and inclusive and loving for everybody, so that they feel safe and cared for on our campus.
Thank you. I think those are all wonderful ideas and suggestions. And just also, it goes back to what you all said earlier about being able to talk to somebody and being heard. A lot of times people just want to be able to discuss these things that are going on and have someone listen to what has happened. And if they can just get it off their chest, then sometimes makes them feel a lot better. And I do feel like we have those opportunities available at Baylor. They are able to report if something happens, microaggression in class or any type of racist activity. We do have different outlets on the Baylor campus where they can report those instances. So I also think that's important. The students know that they have different avenues where those things can be handled. So that's very important.
Absolutely.
So for the sake of time, we need to go ahead and move on to the next question or the next section. And it deals with faculty recruitment and retention. And I've been working at Baylor for 19 years now. That's hard to believe. In those 19 years, we have had reports of a noose on campus, a student was shoved and called the N-word, and there have been blackface parties. There are also reports of microaggressions, which we just talked about, bias and institutional racism that we cannot ignore. This may be a turnoff to people who are considering taking a job at Baylor. But as I told a colleague recently, I love my job at Baylor and I love my students. So I am willing to do my part to help facilitate reconciliation efforts at Baylor. because yes, there is still a lot of good at Baylor. So we have to work on the things that we need to change, and we do have to appreciate the things that we have that are good. We fielded many questions from individuals who signed up to participate in tonight's town hall meeting. One of the questions that bubbled up to the top is, what is Baylor doing to hire more faculty and staff of color? And how does an internal hire process limit the opportunities for a more diverse faculty and staff? President Livingstone, we begin with you. Please share some of Baylor's programs that are already in place and what's on the horizon.
No, thank you. I appreciate being able to share about this. And let me just frame what I'm going to say by saying that while we have made progress, and I'll share some of that, we still have a lot of work to do in diversifying our faculty and our staff and the leadership of this campus. It is certainly one of we've made much more progress in diversifying our student body than we have our faculty, staff, and administration. And so we know it is an area that we have to continue to lean into and put significant effort into. Let me share just a little bit of data and then talk about some of the things that we're doing. Right now, about 16.6% of our faculty are faculty of color. That number has been increasing over recent years, not as quickly as we would like to. Last year, it increased by 1%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but over the full 10 years before that, it was 12. We were at 12%. Now we're at 16.6%. So actually, a 1% increase in 1 year is actually a very significant increase. Since 2015. Faculty, African American and Black faculty percentage has increased by 85%. Our Hispanic faculty population has increased by 60% and Asian by 33%. We currently have 37 African American and Black faculty. 12 of those are tenure track, 13 are tenured. So part of the challenge is getting people, hiring faculty of color, but then making sure that you get them through the tenure process and get them through the promotion process, because then they have the ability to move into leadership positions, whether that's department chairs like Dr. Moody-Ramirez or into associate dean roles and so on, where we have a serious lack of diversity on our campus at those levels. So last year, 100% of our faculty of color who were eligible for tenure received tenure. So 10.3% of our tenure cases were faculty of color, 7% of those promoted to full professor were faculty of color. And we're actually hiring more faculty of color into senior faculty roles, so they come in already with tenure. And that is really important, because then you have more senior faculty to take on leadership roles and to mentor our newer faculty that need that support. So that's really critical for us. We're also seeing really good retention of our faculty of color. We looked at cohorts from 1998 to 2012, and their retention rate for our faculty of color was 63%. It was 65% for our white faculty. And then only 1% of our faculty of color have left after becoming tenured, compared to 7% of our non-minority faculty. So we have had good success retaining our faculty of color. We just have to continue to bring in more on the front and ensure that they get through that tenure and promotion process. We also, of course, have to continue to work on staff diversity and the leadership of the institution. I announced a couple of weeks ago that we were bringing Malcolm Foley on to my president's council as an advisor for equity and campus engagement. He joins two other members of my president's council who have Hispanic heritage. So we're really working on diversifying at that level. We have to continue to work on that at our dean's level, at our associate deans at the department chair level as well. And we can do that by bringing people through our ranks, as well as by hiring people in to those positions. And then I know another issue, and René, you mentioned this about your dad being the first person of color to be a regent at Baylor. We've made a lot of progress since then, but much of it very recently. Right now, and so the board takes very seriously trying to diversify the board. Every year when we look at bringing on new members, diversity is one of the high priorities for the board. And so what I will say, currently 44% of our board of regents are female. Just 3 years ago, that was 21%. So that's been a dramatic change. 18% of our regents are people of color. And again, that was less than 5% 3 years ago. So while we still have a lot of work to do in all of these areas, it is important. We have made some progress. One of the things I will say, particularly on faculty hiring, we do have opportunity hire programs where if there's a really strong faculty of color, someone that a department wants to bring in, we will hire them out of cycle, even if we don't have a position available, because we know that those opportunities don't come along all the time. And so we do opportunity hiring. And then we've also added to the goals of our dean, diversity goals related to faculty hiring. So now it is actually part of the evaluation process for the deans of each of our colleges and schools. And so we know when there's accountability there, it makes a difference in the outcomes that you get. So we're certainly working on these things, as well as doing, training for all of our search committees to ensure that that we try to eliminate the biases that can sometimes occur in these processes. So a few things that we're working on, some of the progress that we've made, but clearly a lot more work and effort needs to go into our hiring practices and to ensure that we're bringing in the diversity that we want to see across our faculty, staff, and leadership of the institution.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those statistics, and we are definitely making progress. Regent McFarland, is there anything that you would like to share or something that we should be doing differently here at Baylor?
Well, I just think that I won't necessarily say differently, but I think it's some additional things. One of the challenges is that oftentimes I believe with administration and professors, oftentimes there are search firms that are engaged in actually going out searching for candidates. And so the challenge is that these organizations oftentimes act as gatekeepers. And so if minority professionals are not aware or not connected into those circles, then they may be left out of the mix out of no fault of the university. Is just a system. And so maybe if we had a system to where we were actually disseminating those job postings, not only through the search firm, but also to HBCUs or even through the Baylor Black Alumni Association or the Latino Alumni Group, and we could kind of help to push the postings out even further, that could possibly be helpful as well. But I think it's important for us to look at kind of how systematically we can get the word out that Baylor is interested in hiring a diverse population. I think that would definitely be helpful. But really, the HBCUs are prime areas where we should be targeting for students that are in those master's programs or even professors that may be interested in coming to our university.
Okay, thank you. I agree. We definitely need to look at how we're disseminating that information about job openings. Regent Maciel, do you have anything to add?
I would just say again that I think President Livingstone has done an incredible job with the help of her administration. But I remember the 10 years that I served as a president at the Baptist University Americas. It was hard for me to hire Hispanic faculty and staff to that Hispanic institution. It was always a challenge, and we were always looking and keeping them in mind, and just looking for culture is what we were looking for. And so that was always a challenge. And I don't really have anything to add except the idea that maybe there's a way to develop even utilizing President Livingstone utilizing some of the 18% of the culture that's on your regions in a part of those interviews or a part of those connection with possible faculty members or staff members to be able to ask questions to those regions, or even some community ambassadors that would be able to answer some questions for potential faculty or staff people that are coming to Baylor. I know some tremendous people through the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, through the African American Chamber of Commerce, and some tremendous people, pastors and Hispanic and Black churches here that would be tremendous ambassadors to help recruit some of those faculty and staff to Waco and to Baylor University, and they would have great things to say. And again, I would just say of the pastors that I meet with, African American and Hispanic pastors, they have really had great compliments for President Livingstone and her effort to continue to change things. I believe, and I'm a fond heart for Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point. I think we're there. We have a tremendous opportunity right now to really change things, not only from the standpoint of a student engagement, but also faculty and staff to make some incredible changes at our institution, being this Christian commitment that we have to really be a unique institution in the way we address racism and justice and equality at this institution from this time forward. And so I'm so grateful again that our institution is looking at that. There's definitely has to be changes to be made, and I think we're making efforts, but it is hard. I'll just say that again, it is hard to recruit African-American scholars and staff. It's hard to recruit Hispanic scholars and staff. And so again, maybe some advantage would be to use Regents and or local ambassadors to be a part of that process.
Yeah, and I think you really have to play up the positives of what's going on in Waco. Down Waco is developing. You have some young families moving into Waco. So Waco has really progressed. It's changed a lot since I moved here in 90. I remember when I moved here in 1990, my parents begged me not to move to Waco. They associated Waco to the lynchings. But Waco has moved away from that. Now when people think of Waco, they think of Magnolia. So I think the image of Waco is changing. So that kind of helps with the recruitment as well.
And Dr. Ramirez, I think also, Dr. Ramirez, you know, the one thing that is challenging is when you bring a faculty or staff member of color to the institution. And again, they don't see it. They don't see a lot of them around them. That is such a challenge. But
that's true.
Again, I think from the fact of, I had a chance to preach at Southwestern one time, and I remember the president of Southwestern had every single Hispanic staff member and faculty there for my luncheon. I mean, they were all there, including yard workers or whatever, but they tried to make it as best as they could to feel welcomed. And I think that's still a challenge for Baylor University, is making sure that that faculty or staff member feels connected, a part, and looking forward to be a part of the family of Baylor.
That makes a difference. Maybe have a luncheon or invite some more faculty of color to take that person out to eat. Those are all great ideas. Thank you for sharing those ideas. Okay, let's move on to future Baylor. On June 25th, Baylor Board of Regents issued a resolution on racial healing and justice, asserting that the university's Christian commitment is inconsistent with racism in any form, and its history demands examination. The Regents and President Livingstone formed a commission that will look at historical Baylor and evaluate it. Regent Maciel decided to have you answer this first. You're on the hot seat. You offer a unique perspective because of you are an alumnus, you're also a regent, and you're also a pastor. So what are your thoughts from a religious perspective?
I would say, first of all, that I had to rephrase that a little bit, because it's not about religion, it's about my Christian faith, my Christian worldview. And so it's not a religious view, but it's a Christian worldview. And so from the very start, when I was reconciled to God, I was also reconciled to you, Dr. Moody-Ramirez. I was reconciled to Dr. McFarland, Superintendent McFarland as well, and President Livingstone. And so I understand that as a follower of Jesus Christ, that I've been reconciled to each other, and God sent his son that we would be able to have a different look about people. And so as I think about that, the perspective that we're trying to do, the resolution on racial healing and justice, it's important for us as an institution just to really look and see how we can continue to move forward, not looking back. I'm thinking about the scripture in Isaiah that the old is past, the new has come, from the standpoint of a new day is coming. And so for we as an institution, I know the brokenness, I know the history of Baylor. I've found out more about Baylor. But again, not looking back, but moving forward and trying to be a different institution, as I said a while ago, and how important it'll be for us in this spiritual matter as we're trying to be not only this excellent academic institution, but also this Christian commitment of excellence as well, that we are trying in every way to represent Christ Jesus in everything we do. And so even though we understand the brokenness in our life, we're trying to move forward to really present ourselves in such a way that students, faculty, and staff and parents understand that this is an institution that loves them dearly and cares about them as a person and wants them to be represented at this institution. And they feel so welcomed and accommodated at this institution. I know our university is doing that, but we have to continue to think of more ways that we can push forward, not looking back. I understand the history and we learn from history, but looking forward and looking to the future of how we can continue to love and care for students that are coming to this institution. And I'm so grateful again to be a part of the Regents. And even though I'm a newbie to that, I am so grateful for the leadership that is on that board. And we understand as a Regent, and I'm again very grateful that we are committed to that Christian excellence. And that means for me personally, it means that we are considering how we can understand the reconciliation. And we understand reconciliation comes from that word of making things better than what they were. But we're trying to start off to a new place for us as an institution, and moving us forward and caring for people of color and of race. And I really appreciate what Dr. McFarland said a while ago, because we all have our biases, and I understand that myself as well. But I think, again, we have an opportune time as an institution to represent Christ Jesus in all that we're doing in caring for people that are coming to this institution. And it is time for us as an institution to, again, look at this as a spiritual matter. I started out that way tonight, and I still believe it is so important for us as an institution to realize this is a spiritual matter for us as an institution to take great concern and ask God to lead us and bring healing and bring justice and bring equality. And I'm so grateful again that we're on the right path, but we got a long ways to go.
Thank you, René. I think the time is ripe for reconciliation. Okay, Dr. Livingstone, this was a big move for Baylor to make. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Well, I appreciate you recognizing that. It certainly was an important statement for the board and an important step forward for the university. And I think it was kind of eye-opening for me how many people within the Baylor family weren't really aware of some aspects of the history of Baylor. And certainly we will tell that story more and better. And I think the fact that so many people were really not aware of that history makes it more important that we understand that and tell that story better. And I think in the context of that, it's not about changing the history of Baylor. It's not about changing the name of Baylor at all. That's not part of this process. It's about telling a more complete story of the history of Baylor, more fully understanding who we are, and then through that, doing exactly what Regent Maciel said. How does that then help us through a process of redemption and healing to move forward in a way that makes us a stronger, better place, that better represents Christ and better represents a community that cares for everyone fully in that way. I think that one of the things we have to continue to do as we go forward is really bring people together through the work we're doing, and not use these processes to divide each other, but to say, what are our common issues here? How do we bring people together? How do we bring about healing? And so the commission, the work that they're doing is really about that. How do we come together as an institution, tell our story better, and love one another better because of what we're learning about ourselves, about our past, and then how that means we need to be different as we look to the future.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. Okay, Regent McFarland, do you have any insights on how other universities have handled this delicate topic?
So I'm not sure I heard the entirety of your question, but I would like to just talk about Baylor and our history. And I think one of the things is that we have to be real clear about as we are looking at how we're dealing with this situation right now. First and foremost, I believe that the president has handled this masterfully. I believe that creating the opportunity, well, first of all, coming out with a statement kind of actually signifies that Baylor, that we are prepared to lead in this area. And when we look at our mission at providing worldwide service and leadership and through a Christian commitment, I think that's what we do. We stand up and we say, hey, this happened. We acknowledge our past, but it's important for us to do this now. When we acknowledge a part of our past, it's important for us to acknowledge the entirety of it. So we talk about Judge Baylor, but we also got to, if we look deeper, we'll see that our second president, Rufus Burleson, I believe, he was responsible for actually the establishment of Bishop College, which later became Paul Quinn, which was really critical in educating African Americans in 1881. So it's important for us to realize that Baylor has always led in this area. We just got to make sure that people understand that we have positive things of our past, but we also have actually things that are not so positive, but that doesn't define who we are today. I think our current mission, our current leadership, our current focus on making sure that we address these injustices, I believe this is the best way to deal with it. I've shared with several of my other colleagues from other universities, their universities are not addressing this issue like we are. And so I think the way we're addressing it by first listening and then acting, I believe is the right way to do it. And so I'm excited about being a part of this family, and so excited about what is to come.
Okay, thank you. So now we will have a final question, and then we will look at some of the questions that have been submitted. What can each person on this call this evening do in their respective communities to promote educational awareness as it relates to racial and social injustices? What can they do to help continue to close the racial and social injustices within the Baylor and Waco community as well? We will begin with you, Dr. Livingstone.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity here. So a couple of things I would say that are kind of specific, and then I'll kind of go to broader levels. So one of the things for me personally that's been really important is to actually broaden my social media feed. And I really encourage people to do that so that you can hear perspectives from across the spectrum that you might not normally hear, it because you learn a lot from that. You learn to listen, and you learn to be sort of empathetic to the experiences that other people have that might be different from your own. So I think that's critically important. I really encourage people to engage in their community in opportunities to learn from others. Waco's been doing a Race Equity Institute for several years, and many people from Baylor and in the broader Waco community have engaged in that and how to work on addressing these issues. And it's a great program. Many communities have these kinds of programs. I really encourage folks in their local communities to get engaged like that. As it relates more specifically to us at Baylor, I just really encourage everyone to keep praying for us here at Baylor. Our Baylor family is wonderful about praying for our students, our faculty, our staff, our regents. Continue to pray for us that as we work through this and other challenging issues that are ahead for Baylor, that we really ground that in biblical teaching and our Christian mission and values, and that we keep that at the forefront as we look at all of these issues. And then I think we've got to continue to listen, please continue to give us feedback. Please continue to be a part of the conversation as we make progress, and where we need to make more progress. If we make a mistake along the way, let us know, because we're not going to do everything perfectly, but we do want to listen and learn as we go forward. And then frankly, we need people to be ambassadors for Baylor. All of you do that in your own way, in your own communities, and that's so important to us, whether that's helping us recruit a diverse and talented student body, whether it's helping identify faculty and staff out there that might be great for us to consider. Any way that you can as you tell the Baylor story and share your experiences, that's valuable to us. So we love that everybody flings their green and gold wherever they are, and we want you to keep doing that as we continue to work to get better and address these issues more effectively in the future.
Thank you, President Livingstone. Regent McFarland or Regent Maciel, do you all have anything to add to that?
Dr. McFarland, go ahead.
Well, I think just continuing to do what we're doing now is listening and creating avenues for people to be heard. I do know that oftentimes, whether it's faculty or staff or others who may feel like they're being wronged from a HR perspective or any other kind of avenue, need to have an opportunity to make sure that they can go to someone and be heard. And I think it's important for us to recognize that people want to be heard. People want to feel like they're human and they have a perspective. And so I think it's important as an organization that we are not what's called institutionally arrogant. It's important for us to always be open, listen, and then be able to make decisions after we've heard. And so I think that's important for us.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I also agree how important it is for us to pull people together. Somehow, some way, we have got to continue to pull people together in our community to listen to visit with, to connect with. As a missions pastor, A lot of my role is pulling people out of the pews and into community. I want them to get out of church is what I want them to do. I want them to go and meet and connect and love others. And so I love that. I'm passionate about that. And so as I have a chance to pull people out of our church and to meet and connect with other people, it's amazing how they become so educated so quickly about people just by spending some time with them. And so, and I'm gonna ask President Livingstone that we need to take the Dr. Pepper Hour on the road here in the community is what we need to do, and just start bringing it to different places in our community and just conversations with Hispanic leaders as well as African-American leaders and people of culture. Not too long ago, I had a chance, matter of fact, at Veronica's, a little bitty restaurant down on Franklin that I love getting my Mexican food at. I had a chance just to share the gospel in the middle of that room. But more than anything else, it's just connected me with those people. And I love going there, and they're always glad for me to come in and visit with them. But maybe there's an opportunity for us as an institution that we continue to take our conversations outside the walls and including people and listening to people and letting them know that we care and we want to do better at that equality and justice and healing that we want at Baylor University.
Okay, thank you. I love those ideas, especially the idea of taking the Dr. Pepper Hour on the road. Well, we are close to 7:30, so we are not going to have time to field questions from the audience, but we have saved those questions, so maybe we will have another town hall meeting in the future. So we're going to go ahead and begin with our closing. Generation Z is our future. We see them organizing protests and striving to make a difference in society. Baylor now has a Trailblazer Scholarship, and Dr. Livingstone mentioned it earlier. President Livingstone, will you please tell us what other scholarships are available that can specifically help our students of color?
No, I appreciate that. It's certainly an area we pay a lot of attention to and know that it's a challenge for many students of color and others to be able to afford to come to Baylor. And now with COVID-19, it's made it an even bigger challenge, I think, as many families have lost jobs or their financial situation has changed. And so we do encourage current students, new students coming in, to be sure they call the financial aid office if their financial circumstances have changed so that we can help address their issues. You know, our freshman class that's coming in is about 36% diverse, so it's looking very good and very strong, but there's a lot that can happen between now and August 24th. We know that. So we certainly do have a wide array of scholarships available to our underrepresented students, to our first generation students. We call them our first in line students. And in fact, one of the things we did a couple of years ago was really kind of change how we do our more broad-based financial aid that in a way that we think helps with some of our underrepresented groups. We used to do what we would call kind of need-blind admissions and financial aid, where we didn't really look at financial need of students. And because of that, we really weren't pushing some of our funds probably down to needier students at times. And so now we really look more holistically at students, not just their academic record, but also their financial need. And because of that, we have really reallocated funds in some ways that have really helped us with some of our students of color and other underrepresented groups to make more financial aid available to them. And then, of course, we continue to develop programs like the Trailblazer Scholarship and others to really help students who come in with an interest in diversity issues that want to help us make a difference in this area to do that. So we hope folks will come alongside us. We always need more scholarship dollars to support our students, in particular our students with the greatest need. And so that's certainly an area we're focusing on as part of our Give Light fundraising campaign as well, to meet the needs of our students as we look forward.
Okay, thank you. I'm excited about what's on the horizon. Before we end our town hall this evening, we would like to provide our panelists an opportunity to provide closing remarks. Dr. Livingstone, we will begin with you.
Well, let me just thank everyone again for being here. It was wonderful, Dr. Moody-Ramirez, for you to host us and facilitate. Regents Maciel and McFarland, and certainly Representative Allred, who had to leave us. And then again, I really want to thank our Black and Latino alumni groups for their leadership in this. We look forward to working with everyone in the days and months and years ahead as we continue to work on these issues and really ensure that Baylor is a caring Christian community for all of our students, faculty, staff, alumni, and friends, and particularly for those of color who have sometimes felt marginalized on our campus. So this is important to us. We care about it, and we are deeply committed to continuing to make progress in this area.
Thank you. Dr. McFarland, would you care to share your closing remarks?
Well, just my closing remarks first, just thank you to the university, to President Livingstone for just this opportunity to have a conversation tonight. I hope this is the first of several conversations. And I do believe that the words are important, but the actions speak louder. And I think it's important for us to continue to act, to make sure that Baylor University is a just university, one that addresses our challenges when we find them, and we are prepared to move forward. And I believe that the country needs a Baylor right now during this time. And I believe that Baylor is definitely poised, that we're poised as a family to address the issues if we're willing to do that.
Okay, and we will end with closing remarks from Regent Maciel.
Again, I'm also grateful for President Livingstone just and her work and her leadership and her staff that are doing a great job and making great strides. And I'm honored to serve as a regent, and grateful again for the Black Alumni Alliance and also the Latina leadership group to be a part of this discussion tonight. I look forward to days ahead of us when we continue to make strides as an institution. I look forward to being a part of those things that are going to be happening for us as an institution. And again, I'm reminded again how this, to me personally, again, I just say that being a spiritual matter for us as an institution, that we are striving for that Christian excellence. And I think that's going to be a way for us as an institution that we continue to pray and lift up the issues that are in front of us and continue to understand God's incredible love for us, that we would also love others around us as well. So I'm excited about the future of Baylor University and look forward to serving and being a part of all that we'll be doing.
All right. Please join me in thanking our distinguished panel for their insights and wisdom today. In the scriptures, we are constantly reminded that to whom much is given, much is required from Almighty God. Baylor has been given many gifts. We know that people are watching Baylor. We want to personally thank Marie Brown and Taryn Allen for their vision for this town hall with the argument to make this event possible. Marie and Taryn both have been deputized to register Texans to vote. They are planning various voter registration drives throughout the Dallas Metroplex area as well as Waco. If you are interested in participating with this call to action, please reach out to them. Marie and Taryn want to thank Dr. Livingstone, Dr. McFarland, Mr. Maciel, U.S. Representative Colin Allred, and everyone who has participated in the town hall meeting this evening. God bless and please stay safe. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.